I recently took a little day trip to the city to try out some Bay Area originals, and nothing screams SF more than a steaming hot bowl of Cioppino. On today's episode, we're going to go on a little field trip, talk some history, and of course we're going to learn how to make the San Francisco classic at home. Our journey for Cioppino perfection takes us to a spot enjoyed by locals and tourists alike. In the heart of the Fisherman's Wharf, on its own little dock, Scoma's has been cooking up some of the freshest seafood in town. But be sure to make a reservation no matter what time of day you go. This place has a tendency to get pretty packed. We ordered a few of the basics. To start, the clam chowder is awesome here. A lot of local shops tend to go overboard with the flour, and some places are basically a watery, milky latte, but Scoma's has the balance down pat. There's a generous chunk of clam in every bite, and it just tastes like really good quality seafood. They also give you a hunk of fresh sourdough to mop everything up. Next up is a San Francisco original, the crab louie. It's basically a crab salad with some shredded iceberg lettuce, roasted beets, pickled peppers, topped generously with some fresh local Dungeness crab, and a homemade creamy dressing, which tastes a lot like Thousand Island. It's super refreshing, and it's a pretty good pairing for the star of the show. This is Cioppino, the real San Francisco treat. It's a seafood stew chock full of shrimp, squid, scallops, local whitefish, and of course some Dungeness crab. The broth is made from tomatoes and what tastes like a little bit of seafood broth. It's super simple and really tasty, and that all comes down to its roots. I'll share two stories. One is a pretty popular myth that you're going to hear from locals, and the other is a less fun analysis from a culinary historian. But for the fun one, according to legend, Cioppino was invented by Italian immigrants living in the North Beach area of San Francisco in the late 1800s. Fishermen who had a bit of bad luck would walk around the neighborhood with an empty pot and ask their buddies to chip in for that night's dinner. Locals say that the call to chip in eventually morphed into Cioppino. It's a fun story, but it's not entirely accurate. This party pooper, just kidding, this distinguished California cuisine expert says that the name likely comes from the Ligurian dish cioppine, which is another type of seafood stew made back in the homeland of Italy. Whatever the real origin is, the earliest recipe for Cioppino can be found in the Refugees Cookbook, which was originally printed as part of a fundraiser for the victims of the devastating 1906 earthquake, which took out most of the city. This recipe is super simple. It's just tomatoes, onions, peppers, and clam juice with some lightly cooked seafood. These days, a lot of the competition overload their versions with garlic and spices, but this is exactly how I like it. Scoma's makes their Cioppino taste like tomatoes and seafood, and by the way, the seafood is perfectly cooked, super moist and tender. I really like this place. The staff are super friendly and really old school. I'll definitely be coming back for years to come, but if San Francisco is just a little too far for you, no worries. Seafood satisfaction is only minutes away. You can have whatever ingredients you want in this, but the secret to a really good Cioppino is in the seafood. Freshness and quality are key here, so go local if you can. Depending on where you live, your best choice for ingredients are going to be different from mine, so ask your friendly neighborhood fishmonger for a recommendation if you're not sure. I got the basics, which were some little neck clams, mussels, shell-on shrimp, and some local squid. I also went for a piece of whitefish. This is a really nice haddock and it was on sale, but cod and halibut are pretty typical around here. I'm gonna skip the crab today, it's way too expensive, and I think I'm gonna save our precious local dungies for their own episode. Back at home, the prep is really straightforward. Just go through your shellfish and make sure to toss out anything that's dead, so look for mussels and clams that are gaping open and won't close with a little tap. Also do a little sniff test to make sure that they aren't stinky. These look good, so give them a good rinse to get off any sand and make sure to clean the mussels. Remove any beards if they have any, they're these fibrous things that help the mussels stick to rocks, and also scrub off any barnacles and the like that they tend to make things pretty gritty in the pot. These guys came pre-cleaned, so we're good to go. The recipe I'm going to share today is a hybrid of a few different famous ones from around the city, but feel free to change it up if you want. Speaking of, let's get our tomato sauce ready. Start off with a little bit of olive oil and a couple split cloves of garlic with the inner sprout removed. This is a pretty typical thing Italian chefs usually do, as the sprouts are said to have a strong flavor and some bitterness. Fry these guys off until evenly browned all around and then add in your tomatoes. I got a can of really high quality whole tomatoes that I lightly crushed by hand. You can go for diced or whatever you want as long as there's some nice chunks of tomatoes. It's nice to have that bite. You can also add in some dried peppers if you want a little kick. These are some dried Thai bird's eye chilies that I got from my garden. Let that simmer for about 10 minutes and then fish out the garlic and chilies. They've given all that they can. And that's the tomato sauce. It's super simple. I'm not exactly sure why, but a lot of online recipes add fennel and carrots and celery and stuff, which I've literally never seen or tasted in most of the OG spots in the city, but you can do what you want. At this point, you can add in your clam juice. Use homemade if you can, but that can be quite a hassle, and to be honest, the bottled stuff tastes totally fine too. When everything is up to a simmer, you can either reduce it by half to get a nice thick Cioppino, or if you're like me and like it a little bit soupier, you can go right ahead and start adding in your seafood in the order that it cooks, starting with the hard shells. Add in your clams first, they take the longest to cook, and then after about a minute, add in the mussels, and then a minute later you can add in the fish. And then another 30 seconds later, add in the squid. Stir it once, being careful not to break up the fish, and then 30 seconds after that, follow it up with the shrimp, and then let that simmer for a couple more minutes with the lid on until the clams are fully opened up and the shrimps turn bright orange. Give it a taste and adjust the seasoning as needed with a little bit of salt. The shellfish that we used added plenty of salinity, so this guy barely needed any adjustment. Just top it off with a little bit of fresh chopped parsley and we're good to go. I served this guy up with a garlic toast that I made with a fresh piece of San Francisco sourdough. We'll cover this place in a future episode, so stay tuned. Just slice it up and rub a split clove of garlic on the bread, and trust me, it'll be plenty flavorful. Drizzle on a little bit of olive oil and then stick that under the broiler until it's nice and crispy. Plate that bread up on the edge of the pot for a nice looking thumbnail, and dang, that looks good. But how does it taste? Well, the broth is deep and rich, but balanced by the acidity of the tomatoes. There's this wonderful fragrance of fresh seafood, which, by the way, are perfectly cooked. That staggered drop that we did earlier helped keep stuff from overcooking. The shrimp and the fish are just barely cooked through and they're super moist, and the squid is nice and tender, not rubbery at all. This is a really good and solid straightforward recipe that's guaranteed to slap every time. Oh, and don't forget to soak it up with some of that fresh bread. Well, that's going to be it for today. If you liked what you saw, be sure to hit that like button. It really helps us out. And I love making what you guys suggest, so if you want me to try out your favorite dish, let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
When you were little, we used to go skiing every February to Lake Tahoe because we wanted to make sure you guys knew how to ski and snowboard. And then after that, you could decide for yourself if you want to like it or not. But we wanted to at least make sure we take you guys so you learn, right? I was always on the bunny slope though. Never got better. Whenever we went to the snow, all you wanted to do was build snowman, do snowball fight. Oh, I think one year we did tubing too. I just wanted to make sure you knew how to ski. Did you ever learn how to snowboard?
Kind of.